Tackle today, the Justice Brothers at Tackle Trading, bringing you all the charts, news, and analysis so you can be informed in just a few minutes on your trading decisions. Nvidia getting the bump up to the Dow, election hesitation. Check out Tackle Trading Lounge each and every day this week. We are going to have full analysis on sectors, on individual stocks, post-election, pre-election, something you want to be a part of. You can be part of that fun by signing up for a 15-day free trial today. Go to tackletrading.com. Matt, you broke down the technicals in the Tackle Trading newsletter this weekend. I thought it was fascinating analysis. Where are we on the eve of the election?
Yeah, before we get into that, definitely check out the Trade Justice podcast as well that was released yesterday. So definitely check that out for all the macro conversations. And, the topic of this week in the podcast was really kind of Goldman Sachs election predictions for the market. We went through and we, had a very open discussion on whether or not Goldman was accurate or not regarding their prediction, regarding whether or not Trump wins or Harris wins. So definitely check out the Trading Justice podcast. But as for the technical side of the equation here, we're starting off the week and we're battling a very similar situation that we left last week, and that's the 50-period moving average after a little bit of a drop following some chop on last Thursday's price action. Well, that was a quick journey right back down to the 50-period moving average. In the last 2 days, you're really just kind of within that pocket between that downward drifting 9 EMA and the 50-period moving average acting as a support. We call this a pocket. The pocket got filled. It's now looking very pinchy, Mark, between the rising 50 and the downward crossing 9 EMA. And you certainly do expect volatility this week, and you certainly do expect the market to not stay in this tight range as we're coming through just hell week, right? And I described that as last week, 165, 67 earnings reports. Obviously, major earnings reports, economic reports, excuse me. This week, you don't have that much. You have 105 earnings reports. Yeah, but you do have the election on Tuesday. You do have the Fed on Thursday, and you do expect the market to break out of this range. The ultimate question I think we all have is, does the 50-period moving average hold throughout the volatility? And do we get right back up above that 20-period moving average this week? Because that's what I think you need to see for the confidence to come back into the market following that drop in prices, to play a little defense on that 50, show some upward movement in price, which we have not seen outside of some intraday analysis over the course of the last 3 weeks now. And so obviously the market was waiting on last week. It was waiting on this week. Now we're here. Let's see what we can get. And you have a decent technical situation where if you violate the 50, should be a pretty clean journey to the next support level. But once again, this is about understanding how the market behaves around the election going into the Fed on Thursday and whether or not support's holding in that.
Yeah, not a surprise that we're hesitating a little bit. Wouldn't it be surprising to me if we hesitate into the election and then we kind of have a go and don't pattern?
I'd say that would be a good situation to have 3 dojis in a row following Thursday's pricing where you don't.
It'd be really fantastic.
Right. Yeah, that's after you get punched in the face, you want to stand tall a little bit. And the market got punched in the face last Thursday, and it's standing tall a little bit, trying to play a little defense here. Now, obviously, defense in front of a catalyst is going to be important to see that catalyst, but it's better than seeing the alternative. I can tell you that.
Yeah, the thing I like about it the most is it's not making me make any tough decisions on existing positions, right? I'll wait for the technicals to develop for new trades, not making me make any tough decisions on a Monday. There are no
hands a little bit in front of the election.
Indeed. There is no economic news to report today. Economic news is not going to be a factor this week. We got 2 big events, Matt. Obviously, the U.S. elections tomorrow, Fed meeting on Thursday. There's just not a lot else happening. That's going to take all the oxygen out of the room this week, isn't it?
It definitely is. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Once again, you go to the economic calendar, and what do you see? You just see really kind of that Fed statement. You obviously have the election here tomorrow. Outside of that, you don't have a lot of economic news this week, and quite frankly, nobody, and I mean nobody, is going to care about ISM services tomorrow.
No, literally nobody. That could be the best or worst number in the history of mankind, and it doesn't matter. Listen, a big call up by Nvidia, long overdue. Poor Intel gets bumped. Berkshire Hathaway. Some interesting stock news on a Monday morning.
Yeah, we definitely had a little bit of earnings news on a Monday morning here with Berkshire reporting over the weekend. You also had a couple other stocks like Marriott report here today as well. But outside of that, you had a couple stocks get the invite into the Dow, and so I thought that was going to be a little bit more important. We'll cover Buffett's Berkshire in the Traders Lounge later on today. But in that report coming out of Berkshire, you basically had Buffett reduce position in Apple again. And once again, this has been an ongoing journey with Buffett over the last 3 quarters, basically maintaining a very disciplined approach of reducing Apple, reducing Apple, reducing Apple, reducing Apple. Now, Apple remains Berkshire's number one holding, but if you'll recall, 3 quarters ago, Mark, it was a massive position against the totality of Berkshire's holdings. Now you're talking about him over time reducing it to the point where it will most likely become less than 10% against his total holdings. And so Apple just in the news a little bit as Buffett continues to trim his position in Apple. Now on the other two stocks here, we're just talking about invites into the big dance. Now the big dance, obviously the S&P 500 in my estimation. But when you're talking about the Dow 30, the cyclical component of the Dow 30, the healthcare, industrial, finance Dow 30, you have a couple stocks in there that had just fundamentally changed over the years, and that certainly does happen. And so the Dow wanted to basically reflect a little bit of a modern update, I would call it. And so they are kicking out Intel out of the Dow, and they were replacing Intel with the leader in AI, the leader in semiconductors, the leader in everything from a technology perspective, and that is Nvidia, which will make the Dow perform a little bit more similar to the S&P 500 itself. And then you have Sherwin-Williams also out of the cyclical basic materials area of the market. They are replacing Dow Chem out of the basic materials. So you had one tech stock get booted out of the Dow. They replaced it with another tech stock. They took one Dow component, one cyclical basic materials component in Dow Chem, and they replaced them with Sherwin-Williams here. So congrats to NVIDIA and Sherwin-Williams for getting the invite into the Dow there. Let's take a look very quickly at some of these charts. Apple, obviously, this is not additional news for Apple. This has been an ongoing conversation with Apple, and it's been widely understood that he's going to continue to reduce the position. So not really a new news item for Apple, but certainly worthy of an update there coming out of Berkshire's earnings. And by the way, Berk themselves, when you're looking at Berkshire, they actually had a miss on their earnings report, both on the EPS and the revenue side of the equation. Revenue year over year just kind of capped it, not a lot of growth there. So a slight miss against EPS, so a little bit of a downward movement in price on Berk. Seeing that across the board in a few of the earnings reports here today. Now, on the two companies that got the invite into the Dow, you're not seeing a major move in Nvidia here because, again, it was kind of expected, and obviously the Dow is not the S&P 500. When you're talking about a company that's already everywhere, just a little bit of a chasing there on Nvidia with the Dow. And then on Sherwin-Williams, technically here you're still tracking this very similar to you're tracking the market. And then when you're looking at Sherwin-Williams, it actually had a little bit of a gap up, sell down behavior, overall neutrality against the chart. And if you are looking at Sherwin-Williams, not a real good directional chart here. A lot of chop, a lot of volatility following their earnings from last a week and a half ago. Now you get the news gaps up, dirties the joint even a little bit more. And so a little bit of a stay away until volatility declines on Sherwin-Williams.
Yeah, absolutely. When we go to listen, yield's getting a big slap in the face this morning after that really interesting ramp up. Obviously the election tomorrow, Matt, is going to have the potential of influencing all markets, not just stocks, right? Seeing some selling pressure on the dollar, seeing some selling pressure on yields. Investors absolutely everywhere are saying we don't mind that. Very interesting patterns as we head into the election as well.
Well, especially following Friday, like especially following Friday. I got the dollar chart up here, Mark, but you can see a lot of the same conversation on the dollar chart that you have on the yield chart. They're both kind of running on that same gasoline recently. When you're looking at the dollar chart here, when you're looking at yields, a big move back down to the downside. Follow it, not only moved down, it gapped down, moved down, following the price action throughout the weekend. When you're looking at the dollar here, fighting that 20 period moving average is a real good battle zone for it. You come out to the weekly chart, you have overhead. Now you're sitting right there on that 50 weekly mark. This is a really important technical test for the dollar index itself. And if you see a violation here against the dollar, and this is going to really depend on who wins tomorrow, in my estimation, Mark. This is going to be a very sensitive conversation on the yields, a very sensitive conversation on the currency side of the equation. And in fact, I know we talked in the podcast about the entire stock market and Goldman Sachs predictions on the stock market, and had a tremendous amount of fun in that podcast. So I hope everybody enjoyed it. But at the end of the day, I actually think there's going to be a little bit more sensitivity against the election with yields and the dollar itself. You're seeing a little bit of weakness here. That weakness, if it goes a little bit further here, could be really, really good for the commodity side of the equation. But once again, very sensitive. Expect volatility over the next 48 hours, in my estimation, 72 hours, in my estimation, when it comes to the dollar and when it comes to yields. The market is certainly hesitating here, Mark, against what's happening with yields today. And that tells you everything you need to know, because if the dollar was going to be down big, if you were to tell me the dollar's down big on a Monday morning, just a random Monday morning, dollar and yields are down big on a Monday morning, I would be talking about the market being up at least 1.5 here. And we're just not. And the reason we're not is because there's hesitation. It is obvious on the chart of the S&P. It's obvious to me on the dollar chart as well, following Friday's pricing. And so when you're looking at kind of the commodity landscape from a technical perspective, realize we do expect changes here. Gold going into the events this week looks pretty good. When you are looking at that gold chart, definitely come over to the pros that tackle trading, because we're going to be breaking down those gold stocks this week. Do have Barrick Gold reporting earnings. Silver's had a bout of volatility recently and needs to get cleaned up on aisle 5, which means we need to see a reduction of volatility to really understand where silver wants to go, because it's choppy on the top of the price action. That's never a good thing. Shifting volatility at the top end of a trend is a precursor to reversal analysis. I've called those things many, many times in the past. We are seeing it here today. But once again, not today, but in general on top of the chart, but you're not in a bad zone of where the price is on silver. And so I expect this to be a little bit sensitive as well. And then on the copper side of the equation, Mark, we talked about this for 3 weeks.
Now, here's your candle. Here's your candle.
Now you're getting that breakout on the copper side of the equation. Copper obviously moves a little bit more with the global markets than it does with the U.S. markets. And when you are looking at that copper move, you want to take a look at, okay, does FCX give us a nice little bottoming reversal type of, not FXC, FCX. I do that all the time. Does it give us a nice little reversal formation at that 200-day moving average? FCX is in a really good position after their earnings. I'm talking from a technical perspective. This pullback on FCX has came down to the breakout channel. That's what I'm talking about. Not a pivot formation, but a reversal formation. Southern Copper has looked a little bit better than that. And so obviously you still need to see some development on the stock side of the equation, but that gives you a little bit of a, well, if you need to see a little bit of development there on the stock side, you can be a little bit patient on this breakout on copper if you're not trading copper itself. But this was one of the technical setups we were tracking, and you got a little bit of a breakout here. It looks good. Now we expect to see a little bit of further development in the copper stocks.
Yeah, and on the oil front, OPEC over the weekend said, listen, those production, yeah, we're going to push that back a month. Oil tried to move up a little bit on that, but remains just very, very choppy. OPEC.
So OPEC tried hey, we really do have your back, guys. We
got your back, but maybe for a month. Yeah, but
OPEC, there's not a lot of trust in your ability to do much these days. It's I don't have an opinion on it really.
It's what it is. And then Bitcoin's gonna be one of the many areas of the market that listen, the election is going to have impact on a lot of different areas. Not, charts are going to look different on Wednesday morning.
They just are. And if you don't understand what Mark means by that, check out the Trading Justice podcast, especially on this Bitcoin one, because if you're thinking about what does Bitcoin look like if Trump wins versus what does Bitcoin look like if Trump loses, well, based on Goldman Sachs predictions, you're not going to be sitting at this support level. And so that's the thing with Bitcoin right now. You are sitting at a very good important support level in between the 9 and the rising 20. You're sitting at a doji at that level. And Mark, if there wasn't a major catalyst, I would say, oh man, all you got to need is upward moving in price right above that 9 EMA, and you're looking at pretty decent confirmation there, quite frankly. This is a good technical setup going into the event, but you do expect a lot of volatility here.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, we're going to have detailed conversations in the Traders Lounge today, tomorrow, each day in this very big week. Come join the fun. TackleTrading.com. Sign up for that 15-day free trial.